I mean, we did read in his bio that he did do like some medicine.
Prescribing over-the-counter drugs does not count.
This is arguably a form of medicine. Okay, I can see the parallels. I'm never going to the doctor again.
It would be like the analogy of freeform jazz, I guess.
Oh my Lord.
Call it medicine.
Take us to part 3.
Don't ruin jazz for
me.
No jazz for me, please. Welcome to Casuals of Runeterra, episode 170. I'm your host, Ryan, here with the other host, Hetch.
And going back to some of our normal content, it's been so long. It's been years.
Okay. We took a brief detour, right? That new Noxus, Welcome to Noxus trailer hit us out of nowhere. But we're back to talk about what we want to talk about next, which is Singed Story, which is engineering a nightmare. And this will be an interesting one. Actually, you know what? First, housekeeping. What am I doing? You can listen to us everywhere. You can visit us at podcastcore.com for all of our info. Email us at podcastcore@gmail.com. Remember, that's POD cast COR. That's how it's spelled. There's no E. And then follow us on all the platforms because that's going to help us with discoverability. We appreciate it. If you don't listen on YouTube, hey, subscribe. It helps. You don't ever have to see it again. But leave a like and comment wherever you do listen. But word of mouth has gotten us this far. So tell a friend to ascend beyond the limits of flesh by listening to the Casuals of Runeterra podcast.
Yeah, you just had to actually spell the email, and now I'm like, when we're done recording, I'm gonna have to go listen to a whole POD album. Thanks for that.
So yeah, Engineering a Nightmare, which is, we talked about before, so many stories that have been related to Piltover and Zon have been retconned for the sake of Arcane, which is a good thing. We don't mind it. And Singe's stories is one of those. And we talked about his bio. Listen to that because we kind of go in depth on our thoughts on the changes that were made. We do talk about what we like that was kept, what wasn't, and how we see that being played out in the future as the story progresses to Noxus. And this one is very interesting because they did keep some of this. Just the way they told it is a bit different, and also the specimen that was chosen is different. But up top, this is by Phillip Vargas, which is a writer who's more on the narrative side overall for the games rather than being specific stories. But we do get one from here, obviously one of the older stories that has been changed. And once again, this is the old lore for Singed that is different from the process and how it plays out in Arcane. And one thing we do know, though, based on our previous episode, spoilers, I'll give you a second. This story does take place after the Ionia campaign, where he commits war crimes. Yeah, that's important to know.
Yeah, that's important to know. And another thing that is important to know is that this is post-Singed war crimes, which means that Singed hasn't lost a taste for war crimes. So this story does go into like some kind of brutal details as far as the procedure that Singed is documenting. So for Warhammer fans, if you read any of the books about how the Space Marines are made, all right, you're in the right territory. For anyone who doesn't consume grim, dark content, it gets very graphic. There's your warning.
Yep, great trigger warning. Props to the author. It's one of those stories. He captures the whole diabolical inhumanity of all these acts because, as Hetch mentioned, Swain is in peak hubris mode. He's untouchable. He has unlimited funds. He has all the things he needs to do the devil's work. And we're going to see that. And this is one of those stories that us doing our thing and telling you about is going to be much different from reading it. If you're going to read it, as Hetch gave you the trigger warning, it is a very upsetting read because it's very detailed and it's very intimate in what's going on. But all good stories told in 3 parts. Part 1, Singed finds a test subject, and specifically a formal criminal who's lying low, right? He's amongst the people just trying to live his life, and he drugs and kidnaps this person and mentions it took more doses than average due to their resilience, quote unquote. And Singe's goal is to turn this man into a chimera to wreak havoc on Zahn.
And one of the things that will pop up as soon as you get through the first paragraph is we actually get some diagrams of what Singed is trying to work on. Um,
Yeah.
it is not written in a way to where you can read along. Like it is definitely written in like basically in runes, like a foreign language.
Mhm.
But it's like we get diagrams as far as a look into Singe's vision for this poor soul that he has found that will be his chimera.
Yeah, so he uses a technique he learned while doing war crimes in Ionia. And while the subject was conscious, he's drilling into bone and attaching chambers and pumps, and he splices the veins and arteries with hoses. And, this goes on for 6 hours before Singe stops and plans, I've done enough today. I'll continue the procedure the next day. And this takes us to part two.
What's very interesting about the way you decided to approach the end of part one is that you described what Singe did. You did not describe that he did not use anesthesia. So the drilling into bone, the opening of veins and vessels, all of this is while the dude is alive and awake. So it is 6 hours of pure torture. And then Singe goes to bed like nothing happened.
Yeah, he's very disconnected, and this is one thing you'll see throughout the story, especially if you read it, is that's the upsetting part. It's very similar to Psycho, where the book is different from the movie, where or American Psycho, sorry, to be specific, where the way the book's written is it's the mundane life of this man who we find out is a serial killer, but it's supposed to be boring and monotonous while the things happening around him are gruesome and disgusting because he's disassociating, right?
Yeah, and I'm glad that you point out the disassociation because, especially when it comes to describing the patient's pain, like it is all just from a standpoint of how this is going to play into the experiment. Of just like, oh, he's handling the pain way better than everyone else I've worked
Yeah.
on. This is promising. Okay, like he's looking at it as like, oh wow, look, my hydrangeas are in bloom. Like,
Pours a cup of tea. So part two starts with the next day. He continues the procedure and he begins the pumping part of the session where he has the toxics pump or the toxic chemicals pumping at full valve. And then the response is instant, right? He's seeing the subject begin to convulse, wildly pulling against the restraints. And once again, he's not feeling empathy for this person. So it's just like a part of the process. Today is chemical day.
yeah, today is chemical day, and one of the things that is brought up as far as once we get to pumping the chemicals, and I'm just going to steal a direct quote from Singed here, which is as hypothesized, pain proved the catalyst of change. So
It's
this
crazy
isn't just
line.
disassociation. It is like, no, that is an ingredient. Like,
Yeah.
like it is so gruesome.
Yeah, he theorized this ahead of time that the pain the subject experienced would be key to the process. And as Hedge mentioned, this is proving true. So the flow of the chemicals begin to cause the changing of the body. If bone and sinew begin to snap and reshape around this new skeletal frame. And during this thrashing, the subject's hand actually severs and falls to the floor. And it's like he dropped a fry that he had no whim to pick up. He just kind of sees, he's like, oh, fuck. And then goes about, observing what else is going on. So the Subject lets out this shriek because obviously the hand fell off, and they begin to seize and fully collapse into unconsciousness. You've seen this when people are convulsing and just the body tires itself out. And then Singe tends to the wound to make sure nothing else is happening, stabilizes the vitals, and decides to call it another day.
And like we cannot express enough that like Singed is treated like, especially like the severed hand. It is if you've seen the Top Gear meme of, oh, well, anyway, like that is
Yeah.
to him. This is just a bag of meat and bones that is necessary to create his creation. That's all this is. There is no humanity here, and don't forget about the severed hand because that's going to be very important for the next part of the story.
Yeah, it's crazy that even he's not even doing like a Dr. Frankenstein thing where he's like, my creation, I'm a genius. Like he's building this monster. It's just like he's putting Legos together or Gunpla if you're on that side of the fence. But but he returns to the lab and the hand is still on the floor because why would he clean it up, right? It's a fry, remember. And he notices, though, that it seems preserved. It's not decaying in any way, which is an important factor. And the subject is now cussing and spitting at Singed as he goes back to poking and prodding the subject under the bandages and ignores him. And then he lifts the bandages of the wounds he stabilized and he finds there's a proto-limb that's growing quickly, a little baby arm. And to the point where it's growing so fast that Singe is noticing it in real time. He sees it. There's like a hetch you probably know. What is it? Rhubarb? Or there's a type of vegetable that grows in darkness by candlelight, and it grows so fast that if you are silent, you can hear it like cracking.
I think that's rhubarb. That sounds
Okay.
right, but I honestly don't know.
Yeah, let us know in the comments. But he didn't want to disturb any of what the serum was doing. Because remember, it was supposed to be chemical day. And then we had the sever hand thing happen. So he's letting the serum do its work. And he's like, I'll call it another day. We'll pick it up tomorrow.
Yeah, and as far as with like the actual like writing of the story here, or if you go and read it, the diagrams that we're getting from Singed at this point, they're starting to look familiar. I'm
Mhm.
not going to tell you over here yet, quite yet, what they look like because you probably already know.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is the point where the diagrams start looking very familiar to League of Legends fans.
Yeah. So it's not Hedge. Sorry, I didn't mean to swap you
Yes,
for
I
Singed.
I am Singed. I committed these atrocities.
My war criminal co-host.
I thought that if I dropped chemical orange on Ionia, that Ari would go out with me, and it's in process. All right, I'm trying to figure it out.
Definitely a different strategy from our, Lord and Savior, Santangelo. But Singed, even though he called it a day, could not fall asleep, right? He kept thinking about the possibilities of this new limb. This is a new factor and everything. That's exciting. And if you remember our previous episode, at his core, Singed is a bioengineer at heart, right? He wants to play with that part of the world. But he couldn't help but think about possible augmentations to the limb that may be necessary to achieve his vision because he's an artist in his mind. So he begins forging a claw of sorts to help guide the growth of the limb.
And I'm glad that you pointed out like the artist bit because he's almost begrudgingly working on that part because it's
Yeah.
like the way to go to my goal is with metallurgy, and
Mhm.
that's not what I like. Like
Yeah.
it'd be like this is like the this is showing my age really badly,
Mhm.
but this is like the Cardigans when they dropped Love Fool in the 90s, and it's a heavy metal band dropping a pop song, but
Yeah.
that is all they're known for now is that pop song. And
Yeah.
that's what this feels like, of just like, this isn't the music I play, but this is a good idea.
My mind went to more of my side of the fence where it reminds me of mechanical engineers that know how to program but don't like it. Because like part of mechanical engineering usually have to take a couple programming courses, and it will come into, it's very handy. You have to do it sometimes to achieve what you want. And Singed, because of his breadth of war crimes, has experience in this space, especially living in Zon, right? You're going to know how to do augmentation.
That's a good comparison. That's really good.
So he works quickly to attach this augmentation and he was very pleased with the results because he doesn't want to disturb the process, and the current process is chemical stuff, right? That's the bioengineering side of things. And he wants to introduce this metal piece, but he doesn't want to, you know, mess anything up. So he does it quickly, and then he begins to wonder what other enhancements. He now has a taste, right? First one's always free. He has a taste for the metallurgy, and he's like, okay, what else can I do? What other augmentations could help me push this along? And to clear his mind, he decides to go breathe in some of that gray in Zon as he takes a little walk.
Could you imagine like just being like, "Oh man, you know what? You know what? I need to go outside and get some smog air." Like, like how do you even clear your head like that? But I mean, especially him just going out on a walk like after like grafting a metal claw on a
Yeah.
severed limb. That is I think that is the best way to describe Singed as far as his mindset, because like that again, it's just a bag of bones and meat to him. Like, that's
There,
all this is.
a little aside before we get into part three, there's always been this thought that most doctors are deep down sociopaths that are only held in check by society norms. And because the work you have to do on a daily basis, right, as a normal person, that would take a toll. So you have to be a bit different.
And I mean, we did read in his bio that he did do like some medicine.
That's
And this is
prescribing over the
arguably
counter drugs does not count.
this is
But yeah.
arguably a form of medicine. Okay, I can see the parallels. I'm never going to the doctor again.
It would be like the analogy of freeform jazz, I guess.
Oh my lord.
Call it medicine.
Take
There's
us
a lot
to
of,
part 3.
there's
Don't
a lot of
ruin
liberties
jazz
being
for
taken.
me.
No jazz for me, please. Part 3. so, so Singe returns to see the chemicals continuing their progress with the mutation side of things. And the subject, of course, is shrieking as his skeleton continues to fracture and reshape. And Singe can only see a beast start to emerge from the form, which is the ideal, right? This is what he was going for. And the chimeric properties were becoming more and more prominent.
Yeah, and this is very exciting for Cinch because this entire story starts off with him kind of monologuing that not everyone is as gifted as he is by to look past the flesh and the humanity to see the beast within.
Yeah.
And so now like this is what he saw within this man in his mind, right? Like this is what I was trying to bring out. Like this is who you are. And it has nothing to do with all of the chemicals and modifications to your bones that I've made.
And he even justifies it, and we'll talk about it at the end, where he sees this former criminal as someone who's trying to hide their true self. So that conviction in his mind allows him to draw that connection of, well, I'm going to bring that out of you as part of my art, because that is what you really are. You don't get to hide. So that makes me not a bad person. I'm doing the right thing by exposing you from behind your mask. That's just the psychopathy. That's not.
I believe the current term for that is mental gymnastics.
Gold medalist singed. so, so he increases the flow of chemicals to twice the dosage, which I think no doctor would recommend on anything. And the subject starts to tremble violently. Makes sense. The flesh accelerates, it splits, and the chambers begin to rumble. The pressure builds up everywhere, and the subject restrains finally snap.
And I would love to see like this part as far as like getting something like this animated
Mhm.
because man, oh man, Could you imagine a full-on throwdown fight of, like, actual, like, League of Legends Singed, not Arcane Singed?
Yeah.
So, like, a throw-down brawl of Singed versus, this monster who we totally okay, let's just get the cat out of the bag. It's Twitch.
I thought it was Shaco.
Not Shaco. But no, you League of Legends Singed versus Warwick, like a
Yeah.
throwdown in a lab. That would be a sick cinematic to watch.
Yeah, dude, that would be crazy. But I think unfortunately we're at that point where with Arcane giving us so much, we're never getting that. But we can dream.
Never. Oh,
Um,
never getting that.
yeah. But the creature, obviously the first thing it does is attack its oppressor like any wild dog. And Singe gets a claw to the face from one of the wild slashes, and the struggle was pretty quick because the creature collapses just from exhaustion, and all the indications of life are gone, and there were no longer any type of responses. And Singe was quick to declare it, quote unquote, deceased.
And keyword on it. I can't stress enough that this has just been a bag of meat and bones necessary for his vision.
Yeah.
And it it shouldn't be a surprise because again, like doubling the dose of something is insane. Like this
Mhm.
is the first time in the story that we really see Singe not be patient. Because I mean, he took his
Yeah.
sweet time ripping this dude a new one, but then it's like, I think we need to up the chemicals. Should we go with a safe dosage increase, or should we just full hog it? Full hog, baby.
He took the Ziggs approach, which is just so not like him.
Right, like it's just this is kind of feels weird, but I guess it also plays into like the excitement that he's been feeling throughout all of this, like when he sees the proto arm
Yeah.
growing in, and then he's like, I can't sleep now. Like he's gone past like being a scientist with a goal, and now he's a kid excited with his new toy.
Yep.
That's what it feels like. But
Great
it's
point.
very interesting to have this lapse of patience from Singed, and ultimately ends with him killing his subject.
Yep. Yep. So, like any dead subject in Zon, he drags the body to the sump and he dumps it. And he blames the failure not on himself or his excitement, but on the weakness of the subject that he recently praised. And he tries to draw some silver lining from it that, in all his failures in his career, they have contributed to his vast knowledge. So, at the end of the day, it's a win win.
Yeah, like any gathering of knowledge is a win, and he's definitely like even his notes here, we know how much he's learned as far as like the necessary level of pain to be able to begin the chemical reaction that he's
Yeah.
looking for. The as well as the knowledge that like the dose does need to be increased, but now he's like, oh, I can't double it. It's like, yeah, no shit, you can't
Talk about
double it.
min-maxing. So the story wraps up here with one night, there's a disturbance. And Singed shows up and he finds his lab completely destroyed. And he examines the damage and found the same claw marks that he has on his face on the walls and around the lab. And this gave him the sign that, oh shit, I'm familiar with that. That's the creature. The creature is still alive. And he had so many more questions after that. But first, he needed a new lab. And remember, he's wealthy now, right? He has more than enough money, more enough connections in Zon before he'd start the next phase. And then he would search for leads on the creature's whereabouts. And that's where our story ends.
Yeah, and that gives us as far as the first birth of Warwick,
Yeah.
because now thanks to Arcane, like we have like a kind of different look at it, not only with Warwick but also with Singed. But this is a great look into the mind of like Singed's character as far as like who we know in League of Legends, and I guess like with that it'd be more of like let's see if we're going to kind of go deeper down into that megalomania
Mhm.
in Arcane, or if maybe he's going to have a change of character because Like his origins are definitely different now. We don't know, but absolutely insane to throw out a dead body like it's nothing, come back, oh, it wasn't dead, and then it's like, man, this is exciting. I have so much work to do. All right, got to find a lab. This is what I'm going to do to track it down. And it's like it's just a kid playing with his toys, and it's like it's really fun to see just how well the author who why did I close my notes?
Oh, sorry, Phillip Vargas.
Philip Vargas, yeah.
Yeah.
Like Philip Vargas does a really good job of just kind of showing like Sin's detachment to
Oh
humanity.
yes, read this. I mean, we always tell you to read it after you listen to us because they're well written. The authors put in a lot of work. We appreciate the work they do, and we love conveying it to you in a more digestible package. But we always recommend if you enjoyed it, still go read it because the way this is written is, like I said, it's very reminiscent of the original material from American Psycho.
Yes, very reminiscent of it. Which is also like if we get a League of Legends live action, let's get Christian Bell in here.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
Like
we could. They could. So
he's our
if they
singed.
wanted, if they wanted to do, so we talked about at length. Go listen to the previous Singed episode we did because at the discussion portion we talked at length about our view of how they should merge some of the stuff from this Singed into the future timeline of the Singed we have now, who's the father of Oriana. Um, and we talk a bit about that. But for this one, we want to talk about in the general discussion section is comparing how Warwick's mutation happens here and how it's handled versus how it happened in season 2 of Arcane. So, how do you like this version better, or do you like the way they handled it with the post-credit clips for a couple episodes and then giving us the reveal and then Singe kind of being rolled into the main cast?
Like it's such a weird question to try to answer because it, at this point they're all different characters, right? Because like the way that the direction that they went as far as with Singed in Arcane, he's not the like this evil mastermind. Like he is just a dad who kind of went off the deep end with his grief, and it makes him a lot more human, whereas this is a complete detachment from humanity, right? It's more of like, I have a vision and it doesn't matter what I have to do to accomplish that vision.
Yeah.
And we get to see that as far as like with the weapons that he makes that get deployed in Ionia, and like even the Noxians are like, ooh, I don't know about that. Like so like they're Singed right there, completely different characters. And then with Warwick, I I think to answer your question, I enjoy what they've done with Warwick so much. Like the introduction of Vander's role in the lives of Jinx and Vi, as well as the connection that now Jinx and Vi have to Warwick. I I like that because Warwick's story didn't have a lot of depth. Whereas Sin's story has a lot of depth, but now his new story also has a lot of depth too. But they're very different characters.
Mhm.
It's kind of weird. So it's more of like, do you like the Arcane story better or this story better? Um, and I mean, I'm a huge fan of the Grimdark. I haven't been shy about that here, but I do think that with the direction that Arcane is going in is exciting. I'm excited to see like it. It has potential for me to like it more, but they got a lot of work to do to
Mhm.
make me like it more because Singed commits some real atrocities as far as in the lore currently. Are they just going to shy away from that? Or are we how deep are we going to go into it? And if we're really diving into
Yeah.
it, how does the Singed in Arcane become the guy or become the Oppenheimer? Like,
Yeah.
because he's got to become Oppenheimer now. And
We've
I'm
decreed it.
excited to see I'm excited to see what path that the Arcane writers decide to go down to make that story. So it, I can't really answer the question right now because I
No,
don't think
you
they're the
did.
same.
You did answer the
Yeah.
question. You got there. I mean, It was a question that was meant to require a lot of thought to pretty much get it out there. And, to follow up off of what you said is, I think ultimately where we got to at the end of last episode was that they put themselves in a smart position to give themselves more options. With this Warwick and this Singed, you're pretty much in a lane. Whereas with what you currently have, it was more open, right? Because just like Singed being a more relatable character that has a possibility of redeemability in some sense, because in Arcane, his motivation is bringing his daughter back to life or saving her life. Whereas in this one, all of Singe's motivations are self-centered, right? It's self-centered for someone who's a narcissist, has psychopathy, whatever, right? So that's less, it's less unique to take that angle. And also it puts you in a lane where you can only do so much with it. Where the Singe we have now, if you try to get that Singe to do some of this stuff, you do a bit more work and you're going to have more story there, right? There's more meat on the bones. And the same thing with Warwick, because in this Singe story, we get a bit about this criminal where the criminal was someone who was trying to get back on the right path. They were trying to rehabilitate, right? And when you look at Vander being chosen as our Warwick for Arcane, you can see the influence from this quote unquote criminal. Because if you remember, when we learned more about Vander, his story was rooted in a more militia, rebellious background that was after he had a pretty much like street urchin lifestyle where he was the head guy on the streets. He was, friends with Silco, but he did get into a lot of trouble before he got on the right path and before he became a resistance leader. So you can see him being built from this story. You can see a lot of it being built from the story. And I honestly didn't really think until we've done these 2 episodes, Hetch and I can't really read and maintain everything all the time when it comes to understanding our history, right? We're
We
historians, we try our
unfortunately are
best.
still human.
Yeah, we're still human, but after going back through these stories after so long, after having Arcane, I'm really impressed on how they used these stories to build these 2 characters we have in Arcane, and it makes me appreciate the changes they made in Arcane more so.
Yeah, I absolutely fully agree with that. Not only because it makes me appreciate those stories more, but it also makes me appreciate the fact that Riot is not just throwing these away.
Yep.
Because there are some stories that are kind of what you expect, but a lot of the ones that we cover here is these guys are putting a lot of work into these stories.
Mhm.
Like have worked hard to build a world, and it would be a shame to just throw all of it away. So it's good that they are keeping some things.
Hear that,
It's
Star
good
Wars?
that they're using. You hear that, Star Wars? I swear, Andor 2. You better don't ruin this for me, please. But that said, it's like like it's good that they're holding on to it and then kind of using it as a building block and not just completely just throwing it into the trash. Like they're keeping onto some of the things that
Mhm.
make the characters what we know and love from the game. And so it's good to see that. And this is one of those stories that's really refreshing to know that they definitely kept some of the building blocks from, because Phillip Vargas knocked it out of the park.
Yeah.
This is a great short story. And at the bottom line is that we're excited to see where they're going. We're excited to see how the story is going to pan out. And I for one can't wait, and we're gonna have to wait. So I don't know what I'm gonna do. How wait? I don't know. How do?
Yeah. We'll leave it there, and maybe we brought up Star Wars. Maybe we'll get into the endless discussions Hetch and I have talked about with Star Killer and Galen Merrick. But today is not that day. We don't know if we want that heat. But all that being said, thanks for listening. As always, if you made it this far, let us know what you think, and we'll be back soon with the next episode.
Yeah. Take care, everybody.